This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Kenya, South Africa and Egypt join countries limiting the movements of their citizens in tighter measures to curb COVID-19. And around the world, countries are announcing harsher sanctions to stop the coronavirus from spreading. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live only on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua live in Nairobi. Uche Okoronko joins me now with the business headlines.
Thanks, Mahia. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. The African Export-Import Bank plans to set up a $3 billion credit facility for the continent. And EU ministers are at odds about how to best tackle economic woes caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Mahia.
Uche, thank you. We'll see you again shortly. In Africa, over 2,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported in 45 countries. Let's now take a look at the numbers by region. Northern Africa has the highest number of confirmed cases. Libya has reported its first case of COVID-19. This comes as the country continues to deal with a conflict between the UN-backed government and forces loyal to Eastern military leader Khalifa Haftar. Infections in Egypt have jumped to 402 after 36 new cases were reported. Morocco has declared a one-month state of medical emergency until the 20th of April. In Western Africa, Burkina Faso has the highest number of cases in the region with 114. Senegal, meanwhile, has 99 confirmed cases. Senegalese President Macky Sall declared a state of emergency along with a curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. local time. Ghana has also seen an increase of reported cases with 68 cases confirmed. In Eastern Africa, Kenya's cases have jumped to 28. Rwanda still has the highest number of cases in the region with 40 confirmed to date. In Central Africa, Cameroon has the highest number of cases. The Democratic Republic of Congo has declared a state of emergency. The capital of Kinshasa will also be isolated. This means travel will be banned both in and out of the capital. And the number of confirmed cases, coronavirus cases in South Africa has spiked to 709 with 155 new infections confirmed. The country is now the worst affected on the continent. Well, staying in South Africa, the country's residents have been panic buying after President Cyril Ramaphosa declared a state of disaster and a national lockdown. The 21-day lockdown is set to begin on Thursday. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more.
As South Africa prepares to batten down the hatches and start the 21 days of self-isolation, people are making sure that they are stocked up with groceries and other essentials. But it's led to panic buying and placed pressure on those supply chains, with retailers scrambling to refill their shelves before the next round of buying starts. Some consumers have chosen to go online for their purchases, and retailers are jumping on that bandwagon, meeting the demand for that growing request.
We were very busy. We had maybe a day before 12. We had maybe 12 deliveries to do. Before 12. We have 2 deliveries per day. We have before 12 and after 12. Those are same days and the other days. So all in all, it might be 20 days. We are not sure now because now we are delivering food. We are working with food. I don't think we will be locked down because we have to deliver food for people.
At the same time, authorities announced that they are investigating 11 firms found to be selling products for higher than normal prices and, as the Minister of Trade and Industry put it, abusing the situation. We're told that they are being investigated and will be prosecuted if found to have flouted the regulations. Authorities are also listing 22 critical consumer products that they will be monitoring actively to ensure prices don't surge, and ask the public to report any suspected price surging that happens to them. Meanwhile, the lockdown rules allow for people to go shopping at supermarkets and pharmacies, and it's expected that panic buying will be reduced, provided there are no shortages that are reported. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Egypt has begun enforcing a partial two-week curfew. The country currently has the second highest number of COVID-19 cases in Africa. The partial curfew is expected to slow down the spread of the virus. CGTN's Adel Mahroui has more from Cairo.
Starting Wednesday from 7 in the evening local time to 6 in the morning, a curfew is set to start all over Egypt. During these hours, all public transportation will be stopped. Anyone who violates the curfew will face a financial fine or imprisonment.
Egypt began by first shutting down education facilities for 2 weeks. It then escalated to downsizing the number of employees. With the government sensing the danger of a greater public threat, it has resorted to the hardest set of preventative measures, which include the curfew.
Banks will be open to the public for only 4 hours every day, and all public civil services will come to a complete halt. Education facilities will be shut until mid-April. The government warns stricter measures could be implemented.
There are tougher measures that we can take in the coming period. This depends on the development of the situation. Every stage is well planned, and we have several escalation measures ready to be implemented. But there are also effects on the economy and job opportunities which could be lost.
During the weekend, shops and shopping malls will be shut all day long. With the number of infections crossing 400 this week, Cairo fears the COVID-19 spread can get out of hand if it reaches the 1,000 cases mark. Security and healthcare personnel are exempted from the curfew. Delivery services from pharmacies and grocery stores are also going to be allowed during curfew hours. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Kenya has confirmed 3 more cases of the coronavirus, bringing the total to 28. In an address to the nation, President Uhuru Kenyatta also announced a 10-hour daily curfew to curb the spread of COVID-19. The nationwide lockdown is set to start at 7 p.m. every day and will last until 5 a.m. The measures come a day after the country's health minister expressed his frustration at locals' failure to comply with his ministry's directive on self-isolating.
Effective Friday, 27th March 2020, there will be a daily curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning. And this shall be in effect in the territory of the Republic of Kenya, with all movement by persons not authorized to do so or not being medical professionals, health workers, critical and essential service providers being prohibited between these hours. The full list of critical and essential service providers shall be provided in more detail by the Ministry of Interior and National Coordination.
Well, let's head to Somalia now, where authorities there have praised China for its support to the country amid a global pandemic that has killed thousands across the world. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo reports from Mogadishu.
The Ethiopian airline plane ferrying medical aid from Chinese billionaire Jack Ma arrived at the Aden Abdullah Airport in Mogadishu on Tuesday evening. The aid is part of efforts to contain the spread of the coronavirus that has affected many African countries. Health officials and Chinese embassy staff were on hand to receive the shipment.
On behalf of the Ministry of Health, we thank our Chinese brothers and sisters who are always ready to support us. This aid shipment is very important and arrived at a very critical time. The ambassador has promised more humanitarian aid in the near future. With such assistance, we hope to be in a position to fight this disease that is spreading fast.
The aid shipment consists of testing kits, masks and protective suits that will be distributed to all major hospitals across the country. Somalia is among the least affected countries with only 1 confirmed case of COVID-19. Chinese top diplomat to Somalia, Xin Jian, has praised the country's efforts in containing the pandemic.
I have strong confidence Somalia will win victory of fighting against the epidemic. China will continue to support and provide necessary assistance to Somalia to continue fighting against the epidemic.
Across the country, a ban on public gatherings and international flights remains in place. Schools and other higher institutions of learning have also suspended education in efforts to minimize the spread of the virus. Medical experts say an outbreak in Somalia could be worse than in other countries, but the latest shipment is expected to go a long way in boosting Somalia's prevention mechanism, as the country remains vulnerable due to its weak health system. Abdulaziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, Prince Charles, next in line to the British throne, has tested positive for the coronavirus. This is according to the press office at his Clarence House residence. The prince had been displaying mild symptoms but remains in good health. Both Charles and his wife Camilla are in quarantine, though Camilla has tested negative for COVID-19. Now, besides Thailand, India has ordered its billion-plus population to stay indoors for 21 days. So far, a total of 500 cases have been confirmed in the country. Our correspondent Neha Punia in Delhi tells us about how the Indian government has prepared for the outbreak.
As far as the healthcare system is concerned, that's been a huge concern from the first day. In the last 9 days alone, we've seen the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases go up from 100 to crossing 500. And many were saying that the public healthcare setup, which is underfunded and overstretched, would be ill-equipped to handle a mass breakout, which is why Prime Minister Modi announced in his speech yesterday night an investment of nearly $2 billion. All of this money, the government says, will be spent in the weeks ahead to buy hazmat suits, ventilators, testing kits, and also to train additional medical staff to ensure that more resources are added to India's already stretched public healthcare system. As far as the poor is concerned, there's also something Prime Minister Modi referred to in his speech, saying that it's unfortunate that there will be many who will be impacted financially by this lockdown, and he's urged communities and citizens to come together to help the poor in any way they can. Many state governments are taking steps at their level where they're releasing extra funds from their budget to daily wage earners to help them survive for the next 3 weeks with working no longer an option. But the Prime Minister's government is also expected to announce an economic stimulus package. There's also talk of a universal basic income being implemented, but none of those plans have been formally announced yet.
Meanwhile, in Italy, tougher lockdown restrictions have been imposed to address the public health emergency. The death toll there has climbed by over 700, bringing the total to more than 6,800, the highest in the world. Our correspondent Alex Fraser has the latest from Milan.
The streets here are still empty as many people are following that government lockdown. It's now 2 weeks today since this decree was originally announced, since the Italian government made the decision to tell citizens to stay at home, to shut the country down. Increased restrictions are being implemented nationwide. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte this morning told journalists on an online streamed press conference that there will be stricter fines for those violating the restrictions. Before, those fines had been €200. We're now told these will range from 400 to 3,000 euros for those caught violating the decree. More than 100,000 people have been caught breaking the rules already. There's talk that surveillance drones will be used in quieter areas to find out who is leaving their home and who isn't, and police will have the power to seize vehicles for those driving where they shouldn't be. If people have tested positive for COVID-19 in Italy, they must follow very strict quarantine measures, and they're not to leave their homes under any circumstances if their symptoms don't require them to be in hospital. And if they're caught doing so now, they could face up to 5 years in prison. These measures, they might seem strict, but they have the support of most Italians, and there's no doubt in their minds about how serious this situation is. And the Italian government has felt that they had to do something to act to deter people, because as things stand, this is the deadliest outbreak in the world, and at this stage, it's really about saving as many lives as possible.
Well, it's time for us to take a quick break. Here's what's coming up on Africa Live. In our series on the COVID-19 pandemic, we take a look at ongoing awareness campaign initiatives by various African governments.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back now onto our ongoing series on the COVID-19 pandemic on the African continent and beyond. Tonight, Lindy Mtongana takes us through the steps and efforts that African governments are employing in creating awareness on the outbreak. It is a battle to win the hearts and minds of the African people, yet it comes with its own challenges that are unique to each nation.
Oh, yes, indeed. And when it comes to highly infectious diseases, information regarding how to avoid exposure becomes critical, and this really begins at a personal level. For instance, I have here with me a bottle of hand sanitizer. What's important about hand sanitizer is that the alcohol level must be above 60% for it to provide you with adequate protection. Now, all you do is pour a small amount into the palm of your hand and rub between your hands very thoroughly, and of course between the fingers too. Do not forget that. And this is what gives you protection from viruses and bacteria. What I also have with me here is a face mask. Now, this covers your nose and your mouth, and it certainly protects you from others around you, but it's also very, very useful if you are feeling even just the tiniest bit unwell. It will protect others from you. So, in today's series, we take a look into ways of protecting yourself and reducing your risk of contracting COVID-19. So CGTN conducted a survey on its digital platforms to determine the state of Africa's awareness on COVID-19.
The COVID-19 pandemic has firmly sunk its teeth in Africa. While the number of cases here remains relatively low in comparison to the rest of the world, information remains an invaluable resource. So just how informed is the African audience? CGTN Africa conducted an online survey to gauge just how aware our audience is of what's at stake. So we used two of the most frequently used social media platforms on CGTN, and that is Facebook and Twitter. On both these platforms, we posted 4 questions for 24 hours. The first question was, do you know the symptoms of COVID-19 and how you can protect yourself? 70.8% said yes, they do, while 29.2% said no, they do not. The second question was, do you feel well informed about how COVID-19 is transmitted? To this, 56.9% of our viewers say yes, they do, while 43.1% say they do not have this knowledge. The third question was on the awareness of the outbreak. 84.7% of our viewers are aware that there's a pandemic, while 15.3% of our viewers say they are not aware. The last question, if there was an outbreak of a serious disease like COVID-19 in your locality, would you feel safe? 31.5% say yes, they would feel safe, while a whopping 68.5% say they would not. Allow me to delve deeper into these poll results. Dr. Samrat Shah, who is the medical director and consultant physician at Medihill Hospital, Nairobi, joins me via Skype today to analyze these results. Thank you for your time, Dr. Shah. Now, let's dive right in. On whether or not people are aware of the current COVID-19 outbreak, we have Sheikh Utako saying, what I know about COVID-19 is that the world should stand together to fight this virus. We also have Yehuala Shet Ayele from Ethiopia, who says, yes, I regularly follow WHO reports about COVID-19, that they have some doubts as to whether some people in Africa have better resistance or immunity than others. What do you make of these comments? Are people more immune? Do some people have resistance? Is this fact or fiction?
As a younger generation, you may have a lighter symptoms or mild symptoms and you may completely get cured from it. But what about those people who are going to get exposed because of these younger generations? See, those people who are having HIV, chronic kidney diseases, people who are having age more than 65, cancers, if they get exposed from these people who are younger generation, they are definitely going to have severe form of disease. So I think younger generation should be more cautious about being sensitive about this matter so that they don't give it to the older generations and does not cause a high mortality rate in the country. That is one thing. Second thing, having issues of resistance in African genetics, that's not true because I just feel that it is less technical awareness available, less lack of knowledge that is causing us to have less number of cases detected. It cannot happen that COVID-19 is there across the globe and it is not affecting Africa. We are just detecting less number of cases compared to that of other parts of the world because of lack of technology to test. But it does not leave any race or sex or any kind of genetics for that matter.
Thank you. Now, considering Africa was one of the places that at least had a little time to prepare as we were one of the last hit, is it shocking that 31.5% of our viewers say they would feel safe, while a whopping 68.5% say they would not feel safe if an outbreak happened in their localities? Are we using the small time advantage we had properly?
See, it's very true that people will feel unsafe because we don't have facilities as such if we have that pandemic coming out in the country. You see, just imagine the state like China had 60,000 cases and all of them were able to be isolated. But do we have such kind of facilities? We don't have. And that's the reason why the fear is building up among the people and people feel that they're not safe. It's actually not wrong to feel unsafe, but I think government has taken good measures to control the spread of the disease. I think things should be better in another few weeks of time.
Right. Dr. Samrat Shah there from Medihill Hospital, Nairobi. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Shah. That was very, very informative.
So according to that survey, Africans in general are still somewhat skeptical about the coronavirus, especially when it comes to public awareness and the continent's capacity to handle an outbreak. However, the majority are now tackling the battle head-on by adhering to the precautionary measures. President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared a national state of disaster in South Africa in an effort to reduce the severity of the coronavirus outbreak. Ordinary citizens have been urged to change their behavior as a matter of urgency. Before government's decision to close all learning institutions in an effort to stem the tide of infections, CGTN's René Delcam followed a 12-year-old student and discovered how the outbreak is affecting school kids.
In our top story this hour, a South African who tested positive for the coronavirus has been discharged from hospital.
On the streets of Bokmakiri near Cape Town, a poor, crime-ridden community is trying hard to adapt to the new reality of living with the new, unknown coronavirus. Like most families in South Africa and around the world, the threat of COVID-19 has forced the Peterson family to adjust their behavior in their daily lives. 12-year-old Angelique Peterson is an ordinary kid obsessed with social media. Now she has to deal with the fear and uncertainty surrounding the novel coronavirus.
I actually feel scared about the coronavirus because when it gets to you, it first starts as sickness, and then if you go to hospital, they haven't yet got a cure for it.
With limited resources, Angelique's close-knit family, school and community are all doing their best to try and keep the dreaded COVID-19 from their door.
I don't know what can happen. Yeah, I understand, and we know nothing about the virus because they didn't. We hear bits and bits what the Minister of Health is saying, but what I heard over the TV is like the people is very cautious now. We need to be more extra cautious about what we're doing, our surroundings, who we're touching, who we interact with, washing our hands more than ever.
And in this household, the Petersons are determined to do their bit to slow down the spread of COVID-19 with good old-fashioned soap and water.
We first take the soap, make your hands wet. At the moment we're using soap and then dishwasher for our hands because that's the normal thing that we do have. Sometimes we do use hand sanitizer for the household at the moment. There we go. Put your hands full of soap.
And the all-important hand-washing protocol to guard against the virus is certainly a message which is reinforced at Angelique's school.
So there are 5 steps to washing your hands properly.
As a mother of not only my daughter, but also a mother of 300 and odd learners of the school, it is a very, very scary thought that it is now on the African continent, but not only on the African continent, it is now in South Africa.
What's the most important thing to do?
Wash your hands! So I need to know that the teachers at this school are doing their jobs to get it out into the community, but myself also at home. And so that I have to practice all of these. I have to wash my hands. I have to let the children see that I'm doing all of these things.
And as scientists race towards developing a coronavirus vaccine, this young schoolgirl at the southern tip of Africa says if they don't succeed, she hopes to continue the fight by becoming a doctor in the future.
If they don't find a cure for it, in some day later in my older days, I will study for a doctor and I'll find a cure for the coronavirus.
As the experts say, slowing down the transmission of the highly contagious coronavirus is literally in our hands. What must we do? I later followed up with the family after the school closures. Lolita, when we spoke last time, you were very concerned about the kids, the family, contracting the virus. What are your thoughts now that the schools have shut down?
I'm so glad that I'm so relaxed now that the children is at home now, and also that they're safe and that they're not going to be exposed about the COVID virus, and also then I know because what happens is now it's getting more, the virus getting crazy now. There are more and more people having cases now that we hear that people have been affected.
So one of the buzzwords in South Africa right now is social distancing. Have you started practicing that in your home?
Outside the house, we also do practice that of the children not going out. And even the children are so bored. They're just sitting at home because they wanted to visit. Since that they've got school holidays, they wanted to visit their aunts and uncles, and I prevented them to go there because of for them not to be affected or being affecting other children. Yes, we do practice also washing our hands several times a day, and yeah, that's what we continue doing.
And coming from a low-income household, how are you managing to cope financially?
The COVID-19, it's a bit scary. I'm very scared for the near future because of being unemployed. There's no income in the house, of keeping the children so long at home for holidays. It's the basic stuff that we need, bread, milk and all the stuff, of which is, I don't know how I'm going to make it.
Thank you and best wishes to you and your family.
Now, from postponing large-scale events to issuing travel bans, Uganda is taking wide-ranging measures to prevent cases of COVID-19 in the country.
You have to wash your hands very, very well.
Keeping safe, these young people are disinfecting themselves from COVID-19.
When we heard about coronavirus, that it was spreading at a very fast speed, we decided that we will sensitize our learners, and we had 2 campaigns of sensitization, and we were talking about coronavirus and the different countries where it was already spreading very fast and how they could avoid or prevent themselves from getting the virus.
But the threat is more than ever before. It has forced these and other schools to close their gates. On 11th March 2020, we found students here learning how to protect themselves from contracting coronavirus. 9 days later, the government took drastic action to close all schools indefinitely as a safety precaution. Now, with the coronavirus in the country, it is hoped that lessons learned here are being applied at home. Parents are now sanitizing their homes, but the country has registered 9 cases in less than a week. Authorities blame this on travelers who breached the set guidelines, saying most passengers arriving from Dubai did not self-quarantine as advised by local authorities when they arrived in Uganda.
We have a record of all the passengers who traveled from Dubai. We have the manifest that we have retrieved, and for those under quarantine, we also have their passports. And so we are requesting, please call the health desk wherever you are so that we can access you and have you checked.
The government has now stopped flights into the country and sealed all borders. They have also banned all public gatherings for a month. It's hoped that with these measures in place, they will stop the spread of the virus in the country. Hilara Isiga, CGTN, Kampala.
Public sensitization has become a priority for most African countries, and people are now better informed on ways to avoid cross-infection. A good indication of the strides achieved in the battle against the virus. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Lindy. Join us tomorrow for the next part in this series as we take a look at intervention measures being implemented by African governments in curbing the spread of the coronavirus. Well, let's now go to Uche for the latest in business.
Thanks, Mahia. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. The African Export-Import Bank plans to set up a $3 billion credit facility for the continent. And EU ministers are at odds about how to best tackle economic woes caused by the coronavirus pandemic.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, the African Export-Import Bank is expected to set up a $3 billion credit facility. This is aimed at assisting African nations overcome the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. The Pandemic Trade Impact Mitigation Facility will help countries avoid trade payment defaults, as well as support foreign exchange reserves and assist commodities exporters struggling with declining revenues. Now, many African nations are already reeling from declining oil and commodities prices, coupled, of course, with weakening local currencies. Meanwhile, South Africa's Reserve Bank says it will begin buying an unspecified amount of government bonds. That's part of additional emergency policy measures aimed at easing a severe liquidity crunch triggered by the coronavirus outbreak. Last week, the bank said it would restructure its market liquidity management strategy. This will give some relief to banks and funding markets, which of course have taken strain because of the global market crash. It also announced that it will adjust the standing facilities borrowing rate, which of course is the rate at which the bank absorbs liquidity, as well as the standing facilities lending rate. As the South African government announces a national lockdown to minimize the risk of more infections, the attention now turns to how businesses in the country as well as individuals will be supported. Well, CGTN's Angelo Coppola has more on that for us.
The country recently unveiled its national budget, seen by many as frugal and tough. The coronavirus couldn't have come at a worse time.
Uncomfortable because the current appropriation that we passed in February, we can still work around that. Even before the president sends that into law by the 31st of July, there are still processes that we can, via money, in terms of using the provisions that are there currently. it's early days to talk about a special appropriation.
Government will pump 150 million rand, or around $8 million, into a newly created fund that will take a holistic approach to assisting as many people as possible.
It's to alleviate the suffering and distress caused by the virus to the country and to mobilize the support of business and civil society in support of government's efforts. Government last night made available an initial 150 million rand as seed funding, and a number of businesses have already today contacted us, excuse me, because they will be contributing within the next few days to the fund.
The agricultural sector will also get some support.
We are working with the Land Bank, and 100 million will be transferred to assist farmers under distress, those that have got loans with the Land Bank. And I hope that the other financial institutions will also make arrangements to ensure that farmers who have got loans with them do get supported during this tough period.
One of the areas of concern in terms of budget is the support being provided to the ailing national carrier, SAA, which is currently in business rescue.
SAA came into this virus impact obviously very dented, so it's important that we look at that, but we will keep closely what's happening there and ensure that if possible, as we said initially, that where possible, if the airline has to be saved, it has to be. If it cannot be because of many conditions, we'll also consider.
The plans announced at the ministerial briefing need a little bit more work and fleshing out, but once they're put into action, it's likely to see many sectors of the country's economy starting to get some support. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Tshwane, South Africa.
Now, on the international front, European finance ministers have failed to reach a consensus on how to best tackle the economic devastation caused by the coronavirus. A number of options have been discussed over a video call on Tuesday. While there appears to be broad support to activate the bloc's massive bailout fund, member states remain divided on how exactly to do it. CGTN's Tony Waterman has more from Brussels.
We are at war, a health war, surely.
Worst is yet to come. There are still dark days ahead.
Not since World War II has there been such a challenge to our country.
With European leaders on wartime footing, their lieutenants have been tasked with procuring the fiscal weaponry needed to cushion the fallout from the deadly coronavirus. Cannons already being fired. $800 billion worth of aid in Germany. $320 billion in France, $215 billion in Spain. But some analysts say it's far from enough to support the millions of European workers, businesses, and citizens facing economic ruin because of the pandemic.
The challenge our economies are facing today is in no way similar to the previous crisis. We are committed to explore all possibilities necessary to support our economies get through these difficult times.
But fiscal solidarity won't come so easily. Mario Centeno, president of the Eurogroup, says that while there's broad support to tap the bloc's $450 billion bailout fund, the details on how to do that still need to be worked out. One option is credit lines, which act as an insurance policy against economic shocks.
The funds made available could amount to up to 2% of the country's GDP. If the credit line is drawn, the funds would be used to finance the country's immediate health care and economic responses to the crisis.
A more controversial way to access cash would be the issuance of corona bonds, a new type of debt backed by all EU governments. Italy and Spain are pushing hard for this option, but richer nations like Germany and the Netherlands are reluctant to pool risk with less stable economies. EU finance ministers are leaving the final decision on how to best mitigate the economic fallout to EU leaders. They'll be meeting on Thursday. If a deal can be struck, a bloc-wide economic bazooka could be rolled out within weeks, if not days. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
Meanwhile, the UK's death toll from COVID-19 has seen its biggest daily increase. The government on Tuesday reported 87 new deaths, a jump of more than 25%. That takes the total death count to more than 400. A 3-week lockdown has been imposed since Monday. Jemima Walker has the latest from London.
The new measures mean that many of the shops on this high street and thousands of others have had to close immediately. Only shops selling essentials like medicine and food are allowed to stay open. Some grocery shops are taking further measures to help keep people safe. Waitrose is limiting the number of people that are allowed into the shop at one time to help increase social distance. Also on Tuesday, a UK banking regulator announced that it's going to increase the threshold for contactless card payment, again to increase social distancing between workers and employees. There are real anxieties over what these forced closures could mean for an already struggling high street. The UK Chancellor had already introduced a raft of financial measures to help keep businesses afloat. But the UK opposition says there needs to be more help for self-employed people and more clarity on workplace closures. Now, there were more measures introduced on Monday. People are allowed out for one form of physical exercise a day. They're allowed to go and visit vulnerable or ill people, and they're allowed to go to work, but only if it's completely necessary and cannot be done at home. The new measures bring the UK closer in line with the rest of Europe, but it's still not the total crackdown we've seen in other countries. On Tuesday, we saw pictures of packed underground trains in London. Reduced service mean that more people are trying to get on less trains. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is calling on the Prime Minister to make public transport only accessible for key workers. There are serious questions being asked as to whether the UK government is acting fast enough. There are no easy decisions, but the government says it continues to follow scientific advice. Jemima Walker for CGTN in London.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz. But coming up later on Global Business Africa, we'll be looking at Somalia's readiness to fight the coronavirus pandemic. All that, of course, coming up top of the hour. Do stay with us. My colleague Mahia will be back with more news after this short break.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Now, Rick Baloyi is a young South African artist whose work is inspired by where he comes from. Baloyi grew up in the rural province of Limpopo. He draws lifelike images of women and children in a natural setting using pens and pencils. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
Limpopo province here in South Africa is one of the most rural provinces. In fact, like other rural provinces, it's synonymous with poverty and unemployment. And so young people like Rick Baloyi hardly have opportunities unless they move to a province such as this one, Gauteng. And that's what this young person did. Rick Baloyi moved to the Gauteng province to pursue his art career. Gauteng is South Africa's economic hub. The young artist first tells us that he started drawing in early childhood.
I started knowing that I can draw when I was in primary school. So I was in grade 4. That was a long time ago. So I used to draw with my friend in class. So when the teacher was teaching, obviously we would be busy drawing Spider-Man, Batman, and all that.
Rick Baloyi delightfully masters the art of pen and pencil drawing.
I do hyper-realistic art, so it's naturalistic art. So I try to capture a moment where a mother is with a child, so you can see all the emotions and all that. So I do that in a realistic way. I use color pens, so I start with color pens, and then when I'm done, I do a little bit of touch-ups with pencils. So it's color pens and then pencils on top.
Rendering beautifully drawn images of African mothers with their children is quite deliberate for this artist.
My grandmother had 5 children, so it's all women. So filled with women. I'm the only man now in the house. So because I didn't get the chance to be raised by my father, I want to show people the kind of power, the kind of strength my mother had, and obviously my grandmother.
His artwork is quite striking and attracts many art enthusiasts, a phenomenon that still astounds this young artist.
I still don't know yet. People say I'm a big deal. I'm still doubting myself. But now I'm no longer doubting myself. Now I see what people see in me, but I still want to see more from myself than what I see now.
Rick Baloy is currently studying visual arts at the University of Johannesburg. He wants to improve his skills so that he can also venture into different kinds of art. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Indeed, quite the talented young man. Here's what's coming up in sports. Tell you about the Tunisian female boxer continuing her Olympics preparation despite the push to 2021.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, we start in the ring where Tunisian athlete Mariam Homrani booked her qualification to the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games by reaching the final in the Africa Zone qualification tournament in Dakar. The Tunisian champion has now been forced to stay home following the global spread of the COVID-19 virus. This has, however, not stopped the boxer from continuing with her preparations despite the Summer Games being pushed to 2021. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi has more.
Mariam has complied with the general lockdown and prevention measures in Tunisia. The boxer is not authorized to go to the gym or to run in the club. Despite the Olympics postponement, she continues her preparation at home.
I want to be ready for any future boxing match or tournament, even if the Olympics are not taking place. Qualifying for the Olympics was hard. I am disappointed, but it's a wise decision to protect public health.
The 29-year-old athlete is the luckiest in her discipline. In fact, Mariam's coach is her husband, Ahmed, former champion and boxing savvy.
My wife has made many sacrifices. She lost 20 kilograms after giving birth to our first child. She won the Tunisia Championship and joined the national boxing team, then qualified to the African Games and the Olympics. We'll travel to Japan next year, when the coronavirus crisis is over.
Mariam remembers how she qualified for the final of the Olympic qualification tournament at the expense of Congolese Yomba Naomi, after the referee's ruling in the first round. The 27-year-old athlete is aware that the tournament in Dakar could be the last one for this season.
I was mentally and physically ready for the Tokyo Olympics. Now I'll adapt as I have one more year for preparation. I'll continue my training as usual.
The Tunisian boxer is training at home while raising her child. She's also trying to live a normal life amid the COVID-19 crisis and the general lockdown in the country.
Boxing has become popular among women in Tunisia. The qualification of Mariam Humrani for the Summer Olympics has encouraged more people to practice this noble but difficult sport. Thousands of women and girls will resume normal activity after the end of the coronavirus crisis. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Athletics governing body World Athletics announced the postponement of this year's Under-20 World Athletics Championship